Deep within the Mistvale Mountains, a secret lay hidden. The peaks clawed at the sky, shrouded in mist and legend. In the heart of these mountains, nestled in a hidden valley, lived Aldrinax. He was a dragon, yes, but not like others. Aldrinax was different. The dragons of old were feared, creatures of fire and fury. They craved gold, jewels, and the terror of men, but Aldrinax sought none of these. His heart held no desire for riches or the screams of the innocent. He was a creature of quiet contemplation, his soul drawn to a different kind of treasure. Aldrinax, you see, loved stories. He craved them like others craved gold. This was Aldrinax's domain, his haven. This was the dragon's library. The dragon's library was no ordinary cave. It was a testament to Aldrinax's unique passion. Towering shelves, laden with books of every size and shape, stretched as far as the eye could see. Ancient scrolls, their script faded with time, rested beside leather-bound volumes embossed with gold. There were tomes on history, detailing the rise and fall of empires, books of poetry, their verses whispering tales of love and loss. Grimoires, bound in iron, held secrets of forgotten magic. Each shelf held a universe of knowledge, a tapestry woven from words and imagination. For Aldrinax, the dragon's library was more than just a collection of books. It was a universe unto itself. The air in the dragon's library was heavy with the scent of parchment and old leather. It was a comforting aroma, one that spoke of countless hours spent lost in the written word. Aldrinax would often inhale deeply, savouring the fragrance that permeated his domain. It was the scent of history, of knowledge, of countless stories waiting to be rediscovered. There was a certain magic in the air, a tangible sense of wonder that settled over anyone who dared to enter. For Aldrinax, the scent of parchment was more intoxicating than any earthly treasure. The dragon's library was his sanctuary, his escape and his greatest treasure. Peace, however, was a fleeting thing in the Mistvale Mountains. Even for a dragon who sought only solitude, the outside world had a way of intruding. Aldrinax knew the signs well. The distant clang of armor, the echo of heavy footsteps, the scent of fear carried on the wind. One day, as Aldrinax was engrossed in a tale of a lost underwater city, a sound shattered the silence of his library. It was a sound he had come to dread, the blaring of a hunting horn echoing through the valley. He sighed, a plume of smoke curling from his nostrils, his moment of tranquility shattered. Knights, clad in shining armor and fueled by tales of dragon-slaying glory, were drawn to the Mistvale Mountains like moths to a flame. Aldrinax knew reasoning with knights was often a futile endeavor. Their minds, clouded by tales of valor and conquest, rarely grasped the concept of a dragon who preferred parchment to plunder. Yet for the sake of his beloved books, he always tried. He emerged from his cave, his emerald scales gleaming under the midday sun. His size was imposing, but his golden eyes held no malice, only a weary resignation. "Hold!" Aldrinax boomed, his voice a deep rumble that shook the ground beneath their feet. "I have no quarrel with you. Return from whence you came, and leave me to my peace." Aldrinax could have easily incinerated them with a single fiery breath, but violence was not his way, and besides, the thought of damaging his precious books with soot and fire was unthinkable. Instead, he retreated further into his lair, the knights hot on his heels. He knew their weapons, their shining armor, were no match for his scales, harder than any steel. The knights, emboldened by his retreat, pressed their attack. Swords clashed against his scales, sparks flying like angry fireflies. This was the usual dance, a tiresome routine he had endured for centuries. The knights, as always, roared and charged, their swords glinting under the cavern's dim light. Aldrinax, weary of the familiar routine, simply turned his massive head away, shielding his precious books with his body. But this time something was different. A small sound, a gasp of awe rather than a battle cry, reached his ears. It came from the back of the pack, from a young knight who seemed hesitant, almost out of place among his companions. This knight, unlike the others, wasn't focused on Aldrinax. His gaze was fixed on the towering bookshelves, the endless rows of spines. He stood there, mouth agape, his sword forgotten at his side. The young knight, seemingly oblivious to everything but the books, took a hesitant step forward. His comrades called out to him, their voices a mixture of warning and mockery, urging him back to the fray. But he didn't seem to hear them, his gaze tracing the titles, his fingers twitching as if to touch, to feel the weight of history. Aldrinax watched as the young man, his armor creaking softly, made his way through the labyrinthine aisles. He moved with a surprising gentleness, his eyes wide with wonder, his fingers trailing lightly over the spines of the books. "You are different," Aldrinax rumbled, his voice surprisingly soft for a creature of his size. The young knight, to his credit, didn't flinch. He simply nodded, his gaze still lingering on the books. "No," the young knight replied, his voice barely a whisper. "Not for battle," he repeated, as if to convince himself as much as the dragon. His gaze swept over the endless rows of books, a look of awe and something akin to longing crossing his face. "These," he began, his voice catching in his throat, "these are more valuable than any treasure." For the first time in his long life, Aldrinax had found someone who spoke his language, who understood the allure of the written word. "Indeed," Aldrinax rumbled, a low chuckle escaping his throat. The other knights, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, had ceased their attack, their confusion evident in their wary stances. The young knight, emboldened by the dragon's reaction, finally dared to reach out and touch a book. His fingers, calloused from years of wielding a sword, traced the worn leather of the spine with reverence. The scent of aged parchment and ink wafted up, filling the air with the perfume of forgotten ages. Aldrinax watched as the knight's eyes widened, his face illuminated by the soft light filtering through the cavern. "May I?" the knight asked, his voice barely a whisper, his gaze flickering up to meet the dragon's. "Read," Aldrinax finally rumbled, a note of finality in his voice. The young knight, his face aglow with gratitude and excitement, nodded eagerly, his fingers already tracing the first lines of an ancient tale. The other knights, their bravado finally extinguished, retreated from the cave. Their footsteps echoed through the vast chamber, a stark contrast to the hushed silence that settled between the dragon and the knight. Aldrinax, for the first time in centuries, felt a flicker of something akin to anticipation. He watched, his massive head resting on his claws as the young knight devoured the ancient tale. The silence stretched, broken only by the rustling of pages and the occasional soft murmur from the night. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the cavern walls in hues of orange and purple, the young knight finally closed the book, a soft sigh escaping his lips. "I have never," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I have never read anything like it." Aldrinax rumbled, a low sound that echoed through the chamber, not threatening but almost pleased. "There are many more," Aldrinax rumbled, gesturing with a massive claw towards the endless rows of bookshelves. "Tales of forgotten kingdoms, poems whispered by the wind, histories etched in stone and song, stories that could break your heart and mend it again, all within the turn of a page." The young knight listened, his eyes wide with wonder, his fingers itching to touch, to explore, to lose himself in the labyrinthine world of the dragon's library. "May I?" The knight began, his voice hesitant, almost shy. "May I return?" I could bring you stories, tales from my own kingdom in exchange for—" He trailed off, unsure how to phrase his request, how to convey the depth of his yearning. Aldrinax considered the young knight, his golden eyes ancient and wise, seeming to see into the depths of the young man's soul. Centuries of solitude had made him wary, hesitant to form bonds, to risk the pain of loss, and yet the young knight's passion, his genuine love for stories, struck a chord within him, a resonance that echoed through the long, lonely corridors of his heart. "Very well." Aldrinax rumbled finally, his voice a low tremor that shook the very foundations of his mountain lair. "Return if you must. Bring your tales, your stories, your songs, but come in peace, young knight, and harm no book within these walls." And so began a tradition, an unlikely friendship forged in the heart of the Mistvale Mountains. The young knight, true to his word, returned again and again, each time bearing gifts of stories, scrolls filled with epic poems, leather-bound volumes recounting the histories of his people, even simple tales whispered by firelight, passed down through generations. Aldrinax, in turn, shared his own treasures, tales spun from starlight, legends whispered by ancient winds, stories that spoke of forgotten magic and the boundless possibilities of the human heart. The two of them, dragon and knight, would spend hours lost in worlds woven from words, their laughter echoing through the chamber, the silence between them filled with the unspoken language of shared passion. Years passed, turning into decades, the seasons painting the Mistvale Mountains in ever-changing hues. The young knight, no longer so young, traded his shining armor for more comfortable attire, the weight of his sword replaced by the comforting heft of a well-worn book. His hair, once a vibrant brown, was now streaked with silver, his youthful energy tempered by the wisdom of time and countless stories. Aldrinax, though time flowed differently for his kind, noticed the subtle changes in his companion. The knight's visits, once filled with youthful exuberance, were now marked by a quieter joy, a deeper understanding of the stories they shared. They would often sit in comfortable silence, each lost in their own literary world, the air between them thick with the unspoken language of shared passion. Their friendship, forged in the heart of the dragon's library, had weathered the passage of time. It was a bond built on mutual respect, a shared love for the written word, and the understanding that stories, like dragons, had the power to transcend generations. They had found common ground not in battle or conquest, but in the quiet moments of shared contemplation, in the whispered secrets of 1,000 tales. The dragon's library, once a solitary haven, had become a sanctuary of shared stories, a testament to the enduring power of words to bridge even the most unlikely of friendships. The echoes of laughter and the hushed murmur of voices reading aloud filled the cavern, replacing the silence of solitude with the warmth of companionship. Word of the dragon who preferred books to gold, who befriended a knight instead of devouring him, spread beyond the Mistvale Mountains. At first it was met with disbelief, then with amusement, and finally with a sense of wonder. Bards, those wandering minstrels of tales, wove the story into their songs, their voices carrying the legend to distant lands. They sang of the dragon who valued knowledge above all else, of the knight who dared to befriend a creature of legend, and of the library that held within its depths the wisdom of ages. The legend of the dragon's library became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of understanding and shared passions. It whispered of a world where dragons and knights could coexist, where stories could bridge the chasm between different worlds, where the love for knowledge could overcome even the deepest-seated fears. The tale served as a reminder that even the most fearsome of creatures could possess hidden depths, that friendship could blossom in the most unexpected of places, and that the power of stories to inspire, to educate, and to unite was a force to be reckoned with. Aldrinax, the once solitary dragon, found solace in the company of his knight. He learned that friendship, like a good book, could be a source of endless discovery and joy. He discovered that sharing his love for stories only deepened his appreciation for them, that the sound of another voice breathing life into the written word was a melody sweeter than any he had ever known. The knight in turn found in Aldrinax a mentor, a confidant, and a friend who understood the true value of a story. He learned that courage was not always found on the battlefield, that wisdom could be gleaned from the pages of ancient tomes, and that friendship could bloom in the most unexpected of gardens. And so, in the heart of the Mistvale Mountains, the dragon's library thrived. It became a sanctuary for the written word, a testament to the enduring power of stories, and a symbol of the unlikely friendship that blossomed between a dragon who loved to read and the knight who dared to share his passion.